Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Introduction to Protomatrix webinar. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Protomatrix. I want to let you know that in the chat section here in the webinar, you're welcome to type any questions that you may have, and I'll do my best to address them. The webinar is recorded, and so we'll send out a recording of this afterwards. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. So hopefully you're here today because you're interested in learning how to use Protomatrix as a way to become more effective at prioritization as well as email management. So our goals are pretty simple. So first of all, what we'd like to do is help you understand the basics of Protomatrix, the software itself, the fundamentals, theory behind it, and then provide a framework for you to get the most out of Protomatrix with the least work. There's always a lot of capabilities, and one of the things that I've recognized over the years is that there are sometimes 20% of the functionality that gives you 80% of the value. So hopefully I'll make that extremely clear. And with that, hopefully when you walk away from today's webinar, you'll be empowered to actually start immediately with Protomatrix and actually have a central place to prioritize all your tasks. And with that, help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Protomatrix implemented. One of the things I like to talk about at the beginning is about the challenges that I've seen customers face. Now, I bring this up from the perspective of having seen and talked to thousands of customers. So we've done a lot of surveys, we've done a lot of one-on-ones, we've done a lot of webinars, lots of interactions. And one of the things I see recurring all the time is that team members have trouble understanding what's priority right now. And even though Protomatrix works as a software for individuals, at the end of the day, what we've discovered is that, the individual is at the core of everything. But if it works well to help you prioritize and understand what your priorities are, if you're able to go and actually communicate that to the rest of your team, it's extremely powerful. But the recurring theme is that more often than not, we have so many areas of responsibilities. One of the things I've discovered is that people don't just have small silo projects anymore. Instead, you're working on many, many different things for many different people. And so, as you can see, vast majority of people struggle prioritizing tasks and then keeping track on the status of those tasks across all of these areas. And then lastly, emails and meetings are just causing far too much context switching. So ironically, over the last couple of years, we have the wide adoption of all these communication software like Teams and so forth. But at the same time, it did reduce the number of emails that we get. And so instead, what you're getting is you're getting now tasks assigned to you from all over the place. And so we continue to struggle with understanding how all of this come together. And actually, email prioritization is one of the key reasons why customers come to Protomatrix in the first place. So what is Protomatrix? It's a comprehensive email priority and project management software to help teams manage emails, conduct more efficient meeting, and get real-time status on critical projects and priorities. So how does Protomatrix help tackle these challenges that I mentioned? There's something called the 4-quadrant methodology, which I'll go into more details. And Protomatrix uses that as the core fundamental behind the software to help you prioritize very, very effectively. It is not easy to prioritize effectively, but it makes it possible to do so. And then Protomatrix provides additional views, such as the one-on-one, the agenda, the timeline, to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. So as I mentioned, if you have many areas of responsibilities and you have many people that you're working with, then it's extremely important for you to understand what you need to work on for someone, or what you need to work on for one project, or what do you need to work on today, right? Those are different contexts. And then because of all these emails and meeting causing too much context switching, Protomatrix actually provide really deep integrations into systems you already use. In particular, we're probably the most integrated solution in Microsoft Teams and Outlook. And not only that, so far, but not only that, over the next several months, we have so many exciting integrations that's coming up within the Microsoft ecosystem for enterprise customers. So what makes Protomatrix different? It's the only project email and meeting management software that's Microsoft 365 security certified in our web app, Teams app, and Outlook app. And more, we're actually leveraging AI to help teams and individuals achieve their goals. It's one of the areas that I'm extremely excited about because there's so many things that we can do for you now that I didn't think was possible a year ago. And so one of the things I want to bring up for the people who are listening to this right now is that if you have specific challenges or if you have particular reasons why you want to look at Prometrics, please share that with us. We want to understand the challenges that you face because every person is unique. While your challenges are similar, the way that you face your challenge based on your specific role, your specific industry, your specific job function, it's actually very, very unique. And the way that we've built our system, we actually have ways now to actually help you address each of those key areas of work using our AI technology. And then so we're providing also what I call people-centered collaboration, which is a very different perspective than a lot of the other project management software out there. So you probably have used, a dozen project management software where it's all about projects, where it's all about tasks and we're about getting things done in timeline and so forth. Actually, one of the things Matrix is able to do is actually flip all of that around and help you understand what you need to work on within the context of people. And then lastly, Matrix is available as a SaaS, which is the standard solution, which I'll show today, as well as our HIPAA compliance for healthcare life sciences. If we have PII, that's something that we can do, we handle there. And then also as an Azure government cloud for state and local government. And then finally, a managed private Azure deployment. So if you're an enterprise customers or you're looking at deploying this more broadly, feel free to reach out to us at any point in time, and we'd be happy to discuss the options. But aside from that, Matrix is one click to deploy in our standard solution across an entire tenant. So let's talk about the fundamentals behind Matrix. So there's a quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." And what I love about this quote is it encapsulates this challenge that all of us face so well. What happens is that if you take everything you have to do, right, and then you put it in a long list, now I'll ask you the question, is that, go down the list. The first item, is it important? Yes or no. Is it urgent? Yes or no. And now, instead of actually just having one long list, you can actually start categorize them into these buckets of importance and urgency. And one of the things that we discovered, and this is something I face with personally too, is that there's a lot of things that are important. And when I say important, it means it helps me achieve my goals, whatever that may be. And then there are things that are urgent, which is the stuff that's coming in, that's bothering you, that's just the last email, the last message, the last text that you get. And those are the things that pulls you and grabs your attention, yet at the same time, they're not necessarily driving you towards your goal. But guess what? All of us continuously go and check our emails because that's urgent. All of us check our messages in Teams or Slack. Why? That's urgent, right? And if you think about it, when you look at those messages, are they actually important to your work? And the vast majority of the time, it is no. And so that is why this quote is so well describes the challenges that we face even today. So now when you have that long list of tasks, the challenge I have for you then is figure out where it fits within this 2x2 framework. So the tasks that are important and urgent are the things that are in the top left. That's quadrant 1, do now. The things that are important but not urgent are things you should start planning for. And then the things that are not important, maybe you could delegate. And then finally, the inbox, instead of having tracking of anything that's not important, not urgent, you have it in the inbox, which just means that this is where I haven't figured out where it fits within the bigger picture yet. So that long list of tasks that you have should fit within these 2x2 matrix. And guess what? You have to put them into here. So you have to decide on their importance and urgency right now. And then at the same time, my challenge to you is you cannot have more than 25% of your task in quadrant 1, and you cannot have more than 25% of your tasks in quadrant 2. So imagine if you did this exercise, maybe you can do it on a piece of paper even to get started, then walk around the office and start comparing notes. And this is where the magic happens. What happens is that all of these important tasks and all of these prioritization that we're doing, we do it in our brain, we do it in our head, and we rarely write it down. And then when you actually do put it on a piece of paper and it's tangible and it's physical, and you walk around the office, and you talk to your manager, you talk to your direct reports, you're going to start finding discrepancy. Do you think that you will walk around the office and get agreement across the board? If the answer is yes, then you're certainly the unicorn. What we find is that vast majority of the time there isn't agreement. And in fact, what's really interesting is that success from using Protomatrix isn't about finding what everyone agree on, because if you do, there's no problem there. It's about discovering disagreement. So what that means is if you can identify a priority, right, something that should be a priority, but somebody else doesn't think it is, or vice versa, something that you think is a priority, but someone else doesn't realize that, then you can save so much time and effort by actually focusing on the right things. And so the 4-quadrant Eisenhower matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize this from the beginning. And again, one of the things I want to emphasize that is not so obvious about Protomatrix software is that at the end of the day, it is a communication tool. It's a way to communicate like from your brain down to something that's physical and say, these are my priorities. And then the second aspect of that is now taking that and then communicating to your team members. These are my priorities, and discovering that's alignment or misalignment. So always keep this in the back of your mind. And this is one thing I can't emphasize enough, which I think people have a misunderstanding of what Protomatrix really is about. People look at Protomatrix as a task management software. Write down the things I have to do, get things done, mark them as done, and say that's it. I've done my job. And because of that, sometimes individuals feel like this is too much work. Why am I doing all this prioritization? Why am I writing all this down? Especially for other team members. I mean, there's so many of you here today who's here because you're interested in becoming more effective, but you're going to work with other people who find that organizing and writing all this down is a chore, right? And this is where you have to communicate to them that something like Protomatrix isn't about tracking tasks. It's about ensuring that you're all on the same page. Because if we can walk away from a weekly meeting and identify the things that you shouldn't be working on, then just think about how much time you'd get back. Or identifying the one thing we need to work on, then think about how much that will further your goals. So I can't emphasize that enough. Think of Protomatrix as a communication tool. So with that, we're going to start getting into the product itself so I can show you how to actually implement this. I do want to emphasize that I want to note that Protomatrix webinars are recorded and we post on the appfluence.com/webinars. You can go there, you can sign up, you can watch previous webinars. And so let's jump into the app. As I mentioned, there's a chat section here. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to send me a message there. And again, I'll try my best to address it. This is a great opportunity for you to bring up your questions because, I can talk about the specifics. Sometimes it's not so obvious. So here's Protomatrix. And so you should be able to see my screen. And one of the things that I have open here is the web app. You should notice that right in the center, front and center, is the 4 quadrants. I have the do now, the do later, the delegate, and the inbox. Everything in Protomatrix has to fit within these 4 quadrants. So when I want to create a task, I have to choose which quadrant does belong in. So let's start with the task down here. I'm going to say follow up with webinar participants. Okay, so that's an example of an action item that I have. But one of the things I can do in Protomatrix is I can also say, due tomorrow at 2 p.m. And so we use what's called natural language. And if it says due tomorrow 2 p.m., we understand what that means. And so our system goes and sets a due date for me automatically. So now when I create something, I can ensure that, Protomatrix will notify me and that I'll definitely won't drop it. And so that's an example of a task that I've just created. You see how simple that is. When I open this task, on the right-hand side, it's called the item details. You can look at the item details as a place where you can actually add additional information about the task itself. Now, as I mentioned, Protomatrix is a communication tool on critical priorities. You do not have to have all the details in it, right? Just having a task name, just having a due date, and just having the owner is usually enough in terms of communicating what it is that you need to work on. Because, if the details help you, fantastic. If they don't help you, skip it. But I will walk through some of the capabilities and you can see which of these may be useful to you as you use it. So here I have my project name, so I can go and actually change the project that this task belongs in. I can actually star a task. So I do like starring tasks. When you star task in Matrix, it tells the system that, hey, this is an important task. And you can actually get what's called star reports, which is sent to you to tell you the status on the task that you have starred. And then below that, you have icons. When you click on icons, you get a couple of icons to choose from. The whole idea here is, can you go and visualize some of these tasks? For example, maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's an email, maybe it's related to travel, etc. And then below that, you have the owner. So owner means the person who's in charge of this task, and that's the avatar that shows up next to the task. There can only be one owner of any task at all. But you can have followers. Followers are people who would get updated or will get notification in Matrix when that task is updated or modified. So let me give you an example. Let's say if you're a manager and you go and you create a task and you delegate to one of your direct reports. Well, then in that case, when you create this task, let's say I've created this task. Now I'm going to assign it to somebody else. So you see now somebody else, Eugenia, will be the owner of the task, but I'm a follower of the task. So when Eugenia makes an update on this task, I would get notified. But I myself, I'm not responsible for it. And then next to that, you have progress, effort, reminders, due dates. Now, I do want to talk about reminders and due dates because I think it's actually really interesting. Due date is when it actually shows up in your calendar, but reminder is a way for you to tell the system to send you a notification that says, hey, you should start working on this. Let me give you an example. Let's say I want to follow up with webinar participants tomorrow at 2 p.m. But if at 2 p.m. I start working on it, I may not get it done on time. So maybe I want to go and set a reminder in 3 hours, right? So I can go and I can type down here, remind me in 3 hours. And so what that's doing is in 3 hours, Matrix will send me notifications. It'll pop up here in that home view, telling me that, hey, you should get started on this task. This is really, really useful. In fact, I use reminders and due dates every single day for a variety of reasons. For example, I want to follow up with a customer in a year. Then I would set a due date a year from now. But if but what I want to do is I actually want to set a reminder in 11 months. So then it actually becomes top of mind, so I can actually start looking at it and actually get started on it. One of the things you can do with reminders too is set recurring reminders. You can say, remind me daily, remind me weekly, or you can say, remind everybody. And that's a way to actually surface up things that are extremely important. In terms of capabilities in Matrix, I would say that the reminders and the due dates are actually some of the core functionality that you should always be using. And as I mentioned earlier, when you think about context, what are the different contexts? The context of priority, right? Is something important or not? The context of time, is something that's due today or due next week, etc. And then the context of people, is it something that I have to do or someone else has to do? So that is why I emphasize the dates again, because that gives you the context of time. So if you actually put dates and so forth, Matrix can actually generate agenda, workload reports, and all of those things for you. As we go down further, there's a chat section. So in the chat here, you can see that when I created this task, it has a record of everything that's changing. I can actually type a message in here. One of the areas you can use the chat for is actually to communicate with your team members on the status of task. Let me give you an example. Let's say you assign a task to your colleague, and then your colleague wants to ask some follow-up questions. Now, there's a couple ways that can happen. Your colleague can go and give you a phone call, and then you can talk about it. Your colleague can go and send you a message in Microsoft Teams. You can talk about it. Your colleague can send you an email. But here's the problem, which is, imagine if you did all those things. Then 3 months later, you want to go back and say, by the way, we were talking about task XYZ. Do you remember what we talked about, right? How often has that happened to you? And so to me, it's the biggest challenges that I've seen with task and discussions and so forth, especially when it comes to delegation, is that if you have all these conversations in so many different places, you start losing track of all that communication. So the way Matrix works is it brings it all together within the context of only this task. So when you talk to each other, instead of opening Teams or Outlook, you can actually just respond directly from here. And so you and your colleagues can have that whole record of conversation. You can come back 3 months later and look at it and know exactly what decisions were made. Additionally, what's really interesting about this is that if you have a new team member who's supposed to take over the task, they can also go in here and review the full history of everything that's been decided, all the decisions, all the due date sets, and so on and so on. It is so powerful, and we actually have customers that actually go and would print or save these chats as part of a record. So then they know why decisions were made, and you can keep it for years, making a central place to be really good at tracking all these progress and so forth. Again, when you have new team members that's brought on, they can get full context, and then not only that, when certain team members leave, you can still see the conversation in the history. And so even if you don't have access to their emails, right, you can still see why they did what they did. And then you have the note section. The note section is not intended to be a rich text and so forth. That's something that you can use in Microsoft Word or Google Docs or whatever. Look at the note section as just a way for you to expand some information around the task, but you can also add subtask here. So for example, I can do subtask 1, subtask 2, and so forth. And so then as I mark the subtask as done, the system will update that for me. And then lastly, you have the resource section. So resources where you can attach all sorts of stuff to this action item. That includes files such as presentations or PDF or Word documents, etc. You can actually attach them as actual documents, or you can actually link to your SharePoint. You can link to your OneDrive. You can link to your Google Docs. All of that together in one central place. So then again, when someone takes over this task, they can look at it and actually see exactly everything that they need to actually work on it. One thing that's really neat is that we also let you attach emails into Protomatrix itself. So let me give you a use case. Imagine if a client, an external client, sent you an email and said, hey, could you do XYZ for me? Well, you convert that email into a task, and guess what? You can actually have that email in the task itself. So when you assign this to another team member, they can actually open that email inside Protomatrix, take a look at it, respond to the email, or have a discussion around it inside Protomatrix so that the customer doesn't see everything that you talk about. And then later, when that customer sends a follow-up email, you can actually attach additional emails to the same task, and you have one central place to keep context of everything related to that action item. So that's what the resource section is, and everything in Protomatrix has a link. So what that means is you can actually also link Protomatrix action items together. And so then that's how you can build Gantt charts and dependencies all in one central place. So that's a lot of details around the task. Now, there's so much more that you can explore. If you go up here, you can actually see everything from version control and so forth. But I won't go into the details. Just to circle back around the Protomatrix task itself, these are the things that I want to emphasize as being the most valuable for you. The task name, of course, due dates, reminders, owners. So if you do that for every single one of your tasks and you actually assign it to the to right quadrants and you're sending all those metadata and so forth, that's good enough, right? That's 20% of the functionality. They'll give you 80% of the value. So let's step back a little bit and talk about the bigger picture here. As you can see, on the left-hand side is actually my list of projects. In my real account, I have something like 300 projects or so. So it's a lot of projects, but Protomatrix does a very, very good job of actually helping you organize regardless of the number of projects, because I can actually filter all my information regardless of what project it's in. But this list of projects is always accessible to me. And likewise, tasks have star tasks, but projects have stars themselves. So when I choose a project here, you see that when I select the project first, actually the right-hand side changes to what's called the project details. So just like the item details, the project details let me customize the project. So down here, I can star the project, I can change the project name, and then I can associate with user group. You can think of user group as like departments. So marketing teams or engineering teams, et cetera, they can actually go and create those user group. And then if you're part of a user group, you get access to all those projects. And then when you get removed from the user group, you lose access to those projects. Otherwise, you can actually manage the team members manually. So here, for example, in this particular project, I have 2 people, but if I want, I can invite additional people. When someone's invited to a project and they accept it, they have full access to everything inside the project. And then below that, you have the quadrant names. Each of these can be customized. So right here, you see how I do now, do later, delegate. inbox. That's exactly what I showed in the presentation with our approach of the Eisenhower matrix. But what happens is that as you use Protomatrix more and more, one of the things you'll find is that sometimes you actually want to change some of these terminologies so it better reflects the way you use Protomatrix at your organization. So we've seen people create actually internal documents for best practices at their own organization on how to use these quadrant names. In fact, we actually have several hundred different quadrant names that you can use with different matrices, and explanation of how to use those different approaches. So that is where I want to circle back to saying, if you're facing specific challenges, reach out to us around what it is that you're trying to do with your job function, your job title, and what you want to tackle, and we can actually provide you the information that you need to actually use the customizable information inside Protomatrix. And you can actually change the quadrant colors as well. If you click on each of these, you can actually change the quadrant colors. You can see in my list of project, I have actually multiple quadrant colors, and you can actually choose different themes. The idea behind the quadrant colors is just a way to easily visually organize the project that you have, right? So maybe all the orange projects mean something, all the green mean something. So that's, again, that's up to you. Not important from day one, but as you use Protomatrix more and more, when you go from 1 project to 5 project to 50 project to 300 projects like me, those other things will actually become more useful. One of the things I want to mention around the project themselves is that what's really neat about Protomatrix is the ability to create templates. So let's just let me give you an example. Let's say you go in and you create a project, and this project, maybe we'll call it employee onboarding, and you've created 30 different tasks that to onboard an employee. You know, these are the things you got to do day 1. These are the things you got to do day 7, day 30, etc. And you create that task and you set the due dates. With Protomatrix, you can actually go up here and save that project as a template. What's neat about the template is that when you have the next employee, you can actually just launch that template and say the employee start date, and then all the tasks are created, all the due dates are created for you. Similarly, if you're a consulting firm and you work with a client, you need to onboard the client, you have that series of tasks you have to do for them. You just have to create the task one time in Protomatrix as part of your template, save it as a template. Now, when you have a new client, you can just launch it and say this client starts on November 1st, and Protomatrix will create all those tasks for you. It's a really neat way to save you time down the road. So let's talk about how to create projects themselves. So you see how I list a project here. When I go to the left menu, I can actually click on project. And if I click on show all project, it shows all my projects here. And then I can choose add project. When I click on add project, I get a couple of choices. First, I have the ability to create a blank project. What does a blank project mean? Well, a blank project is where I can write the name of the project, I can choose the user group, I can choose the basic Protomatrix, which is the do now, do later, and then I can choose the quadrant color, right? That's very, very basic. And then I start with a blank slate. But what I can also do instead is actually I can choose from what's called public templates. Public templates are some of the templates that we've created that you can use within your organization for free. You just go and just choose one of these. For example, 30, 60, 90-day plan for manager. Imagine if you're a manager, every quarter you can launch one of these templates to plan out your quarter. Or you can choose my templates. And this is the when I mentioned to you how you can actually save your templates, that's what my template is. When you have saved templates, it shows up here. And now when you launch a project, you can choose from one of these saved templates instead. And then lastly, you have what's called Create with AI. And this is one where we take your goals, whatever goals that may be. Let's just say, you know, you want to improve your operation process this particular quarter, or you want to grow your marketing, or you want to improve your customer onboarding. You would type that goal here and then click proceed, and then Protomatrix will actually go and generate a series of tasks for you based on, you know, some of the stuff that we have and help you actually achieve those goals. So that's how you create a project in Protomatrix. Now you can go and actually create a lot of different projects for a lot of different purposes. And there's several types of projects, something called a transient project. A transient project is one where you have a start date and an end date, right? For example, let's just say, again, that employee onboarding process, You have the start date, which is today, and the end date is maybe 3 months. So after that, that project is done, you can archive that project. And then you have a type of project called a persistent project, which is one where maybe, for example, at our company, we actually have a project for every single one of our apps. So our web app, Teams app, Outlook app, it doesn't have a start date and it doesn't have an end date. It goes on forever. And the project keeps on building up and we have more and more tasks and so forth. And so when you use Matrix, it actually, when you create project, it doesn't matter if it's transient or persistent. It's just something for you to think about when you're creating your project. Don't worry about creating a lot of projects in Matrix. The system is designed to handle hundreds of projects, thousands of projects without any problems whatsoever. So use the project as just a way for you to organize your information in a way that makes sense to you. So that's how you create projects. So now let's actually shift gear a little bit and talk about email management. Because again, as I mentioned, email prioritization is one of the reasons why customer comes to Party Matrix. So here I have Outlook. One of the things I want to show you is that when you have Outlook here, I have Outlook for web, but Party Matrix for Outlook works on mobile, on web, as well as desktop for Windows and for Mac. So it doesn't matter, which Outlook you use, as long as it's Outlook 365, you can install our extension. So to install our extension, you click on this apps here. You search for Party Matrix if you don't have it installed yet. So you can search for add apps here. And then if you do have it installed, then it shows up here from your list of application. Now, one of the things you'll see is that we actually have 3 different apps in Outlook as well as inside Teams. The blue one is the standard app, and then the green one is the HIPAA app, and then the orange one is the government. So of course, if you're using Party Matrix and you install, if you're using the standard version, and then you install the HIPAA version for Outlook, of course, those things won't work together because they're on completely different data centers. So it's just something I want to bring up. But if your organization used the HIPAA version, for example, then make sure you install the HIPAA version of Party Matrix, right? So I go ahead and click on the blue one, which is our standard application. So you see how from this email, when I click on that, I get 2 choices right away. The first is open Party Matrix, and the second is prioritize an email. So let's just say I get an email from a customer. I want to prioritize it. I click prioritize email. Party Matrix will open this panel on the right-hand side. And guess what? It takes the subject of the email, put it here as an item name. I can change this as needed. I can choose what project it goes in. For example, I can go and choose that a project here, and then I can go and I can choose what quadrant it goes in. I can choose the person who should be responsible for it. I can change the due date, and then I can actually click capture email. And one thing you notice is actually our system has a way to detect whether or not this email is already converted into a task as well. This is extremely helpful because let's just say, if you have multiple people who got CC'd on an email and then one of them converted the email into a task, well, Party Matrix recognizes that and then tries to help you avoid duplicates. But in this case, I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to click capture email. So what that's done is actually it turned this email into a task. And so now my right-hand side becomes an item details, just like what you saw in the web app. So again, I have the task name, I have the project it belongs in, I can star it, I can choose the owner. You see how I assign this email to somebody else, but I'm added as a follower. So then when Remy makes a progress on it, I would get notified and say, hey, Remy marked it as done or made it 50% progress or assign it back to me, etc. And then down here, I have all these information. The only difference is in the resource section, you see that the email has been attached. And so now when Remy opens this task inside Party Matrix, he can go to the resource section and actually see exactly the email that I've delegated to him. The other thing you can do with Party Matrix is go back to the same view. And when you click on here, you can choose to open the Party Matrix panel instead. What this allows you to do is you can actually search for an existing task in Party Matrix and attach the email to the task itself. This is actually pretty useful. Again, if you have an email, but it's really a follow-up to an action item that you already have, you don't want to go and create another task. Instead, you can attach that email to an existing task. And as far as I'm aware, we're the only software application that lets you not just prioritize and delegate the email, but also attach it to existing tasks directly inside Outlook, making organization so much easier. So that's how email attachment and email delegation works. One thing that's really neat about it is that it works really well here on the right-hand side, and you can actually pin Party Matrix. So then as you're browsing through the emails, it actually just stays open and allows you to convert any email into a task. So now I'm going to actually shift gear over to the Teams application. Now, using Teams and Outlook is not a requirement for using Protomatrix. As I show you, Protomatrix works just on the web app. We have mobile app, desktop app, etc. So you don't actually need Teams or Outlook. But if you do use Teams, you definitely need to install our Outlook or Teams integrations, because it actually is probably the most integrated solution for Teams. So to install the Teams app, you click on Apps here, search for Protomatrix, and then once you install Protomatrix, you can actually right-click on this and pin it. So you see how I can open Protomatrix inside the Teams app, and it looks almost exactly identical to the web app. So in terms of interface and interaction and so forth, it's very, very similar. The only difference is that the menu is hidden up here in the hamburger menu. That's pretty much it in terms of the Protomatrix apps inside Teams. But inside Teams too, you can actually see the home view. And again, one of the things I want to emphasize about the home view, that's where you start your day. So for me personally, I always start Protomatrix on the home view. It shows me the alerts, which means these are tasks that require my attention. The kind of things that pops on your alerts, task that's been assigned to you. So let's say overnight, somebody assigned you a task, or a task that you follow that's been updated, that'll show up here too, or a task that you have a due date. And so now it's due, so therefore it pops up, or a task that you've set reminders. So for example, I have tasks where I set daily and weekly reminders. Even if I clear them every single day, they'll pop back up. And it's great for me because it ensures that the important tasks come up to my attention, right? Earlier, when I showed you how, talked about the conflict of importance and urgency, what happens is that usually the urgent stuff are not the important stuff. But by using reminders, you can actually make sure that the important stuff come back so that it's top of mind. And that's why the reminder functionality is so important. So I always have alerts here that I go through, and then when I'm ready and I don't want to view anymore, or I can go clear it, I can clear all notifications. So that's the home view. So now let me show you some functionality that's really unique inside Teams. So if you go to a chat section with somebody, so let's just imagine again, if you use Teams and you have your coworkers that you talk with all the time, and then one of the things you want to talk about is like, hey, what are those tasks that we were going to work on, or what were those things that I assigned to you, etc. So Protomatrix has something called the one-on-one. So you see I have a tab here called PM one-on-one. When I open this, I can select the person. And so here, for example, let's say I'm going to go ahead and choose Eugenia right here. So she's selected. Oops, there you go. It's refreshing. It's taking some time to load. Okay, there you go. So Eugenia is selected right here. So I'm in the one-on-one with Eugenia. And what it's doing is it's actually showing me all the tasks I have in common with her. This is a people-centric view that is so valuable when you're in a meeting with your manager or with your direct reports, or you're in a team meeting, etc. Because instead of having to go to Protomatrix, click on each project and then find out the tasks that you have in common that you need to talk about, Protomatrix actually flips all of that around, aggregates all the things you have to do across all of your Protomatrix, and put it into one central place. And so from here, you can actually discuss every single task that you need to be concerned about. And what's really neat is when you have your meeting with your manager, you can actually jump right into the progress update and say, by the way, these are the tasks that I have. These are the things I'm working on. These are the things that are overdue. These are the things that's coming up. Do we need to reprioritize this? Do we need to actually change the due date, etc.? And then the other neat thing is you can actually add share tasks directly from here. So what is a share task? A share task is a task, but the only difference is when you create a share task, it automatically assigns it to the other person and adds you as a follower. So if you're a manager and you want to delegate a task to your colleague as you're talking about this, you can click on add share task, just type whatever you want, do tomorrow, do next week, etc., do in 5 days, and Protomatrix will automatically create that task. You can choose what project it goes in, and then ensures that later on when your coworker marks that task as done or makes updates, you actually notify. So the one-on-one capability is really, really neat. Now to add the one-on-one, you simply click on the tab, the plus here, choose Protomatrix, and then choose the one-on-one tab. When you use Teams, add this tab to every single person that you work with. And hopefully, you're bringing the whole team, the whole organization onto Matrix. And so it's not just you, but when you have them all in Matrix and the whole organization in Matrix, you can see how the one-on-one can have one central place for you to see everything that you need to work on. Now let's go back to the chat section directly that you have with somebody. One of the cool thing with Matrix is the ability to convert any conversation into a task too. So when you and your manager are talking to each other, you can actually, and let's say, this literally happens to me all the time, which is I'll talk to a colleague and he would say, oh, hey, could you do XYZ? So what I do, I can actually don't have to go into Matrix. I can actually just hover over this ellipsis and choose to create a task from Matrix directly from any conversation that I have. One thing that's really powerful about this is that it actually links back to that conversation as well. So let me give you a use case. Let's just imagine if you and your manager are talking about a bunch of different tasks and then deciding that, okay, maybe we should do XYZ. When you convert that task into, when you convert that conversation into a task in Matrix, and later on you want to go back and review the context inside Teams, we actually link back to that moment in time when you had that conversation. So you can open this Teams message and it brings you back to when you guys discussed that task. And then of course down here, you can actually open up Matrix and also send Matrix tasks directly inside a Teams conversation. The use case there is, let's just say if you assign a task to a coworker, but they didn't see it, they didn't see it in Matrix, they didn't respond. You can actually go into Teams and send them that task itself inside Teams, and so then you can ensure that they actually see it. There's several other functionalities inside Teams that I won't go into details, but if you find it useful, you can actually start exploring later on, which is one, the ability to add Matrix tab into your meetings itself, which means it allows you to have actually have the Matrix pull up agenda items for your coworkers, and then you can actually create tasks from Teams meeting. The other thing is we actually have integrations with workflow. So if you go back to apps here and you go search for Matrix, one of the things you'll see is that we also have not just apps, but also workflows. And so here under the workflow section, you can see that you can create all sorts of automation, such as integrating Microsoft Forms with Matrix. So then when someone submit a form, it actually can create a task in Matrix, et cetera. So there's a lot of functionality that Matrix has in terms of our integrations beyond Teams into the Power Apps and so forth. And then speaking of integrations, one of the things that you can do is you can actually connect Matrix to multiple other systems that you use. In particular, if you use Planner or To-Do or Azure DevOps, et cetera, you can actually go into our connectors and synchronize Matrix to those other tools. Now, why do you want to do that? Usually, my recommendation is you should use Matrix as the central place for all your priorities. So if you're managing priorities, you should just have Matrix track all those tasks and then invite team members there. But sometimes people have legacy tasks, legacy projects, and so forth. And so that's one way to pull in those things. For example, you have a bunch of planner stuff, you might want to pull that in. But then afterwards, hopefully you're migrating to Matrix as that central place to prioritize all that work. And then Matrix also has integrations with Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Gmail, and so forth, all of which is intended, again, to help you bring everything into one central place for prioritization. You do not have to use any of those functionality in terms of if you want to get the most value out of Matrix with the least amount of work. Okay, let's start wrapping up. I'm going to go back to Matrix here, and I'm going to show you again the project, and I'm going to talk about what are the capabilities that you should use today, and then, in order to get the most out of Matrix. First, you should go and create a couple of projects. Definitely create a project for your personal priorities, create a project for your team priorities, and create a project for some sort of initiative that you're working on, right? So make sure you have a couple of projects in place. The reason you want to do that is then you want to ensure that you're actually working on things that are actually important to you. I don't recommend Matrix as your shopping list. I don't recommend Matrix as things to track really, really simple things. Not that because you can't do it, but because it may or may not actually help you further your goals. Just think again of Matrix as a way to ensure that you're working on the most important things, right? And so if that's the case, and if creating a task, a simple task is going to get in your way, then don't do that. instead, just making sure that you're working on the key things towards achieving your quarterly goals or annual goals or whatever is actually a lot more valuable. And then again, when you have the task, you can customize the quadrant to your liking, but make sure that you prioritize the task in the right quadrant. And again, no more than 25% of your tasks should be in quadrant 1, no more than 25% of your tasks should be in quadrant 2, right? And then get them done. And then when you finish them, mark them as done. And then for every single task, set due dates, set reminders, and assign it to the appropriate person. And that's, if you do that with Protomatrix, then you'll find that those are the capabilities that'll give you the most bang for the buck. The other best practice that I've seen some customers do extremely well is projecting Protomatrix onto the big screen. So let's just say if you have a team meeting, right, and you're sitting in the conference room, guess what? Just plug your computer in, project Protomatrix onto the big screen, show the priorities for the projects that you're talking about, and walk through that list. What happens is that, people go into a team meeting, they're talking about a bunch of different things, but sometimes you're focusing on tasks that is in quadrant 3 or quadrant 2, and you're not focusing on quadrant 1, right? And so in that case, having Protomatrix on the big screen allows you to hone in on the critical priorities immediately. And then if you have disagreement on what should be in quadrant 1 versus quadrant 2, that's when you can talk about it. And so you can see how you can actually have really fruitful conversation from the get-go by ensuring that everyone's on the same page. That's a fantastic best practice. I think you'll find a lot of success if that's what you're able to do with your team members, just sharing the screen and having everyone look at it. And here's the deal, which is it doesn't mean everyone will agree, but if there's disagreement, you work on it. But then when you walk away from that meeting, everyone should be on the same page. And if you do that, your whole organization will be aligned real quick. Okay, I'm going to jump back to the presentation here. So now it's up to you, right? If you use Microsoft Teams and Outlook, definitely install our applications for Outlook. If you just want to use the Protomatrix in a web app, go to our website, click on web app, and you can use our web app. That's the application that we generally recommend these days because our web app is the application that actually progresses the most, and we also always improve it. Again, create at least 3 projects, your personal priorities, your share team priorities, and key initiative. I want you to walk away, understanding that Protomatrix should help you become more effective at prioritization. And so if that's the case, you have to put in your priorities. If you don't put in your priorities, then you won't be able to go and ensure that you're working on the right things. So don't forget that Protomatrix is a communication tool for that reason. And so even if you're not communicating your priorities to others, you're at least putting it down so then you yourself know what your priorities are. So then when you start your day, if you're not working on the quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, then catch yourself doing that, right? And fix it. Invite the appropriate team members and pitch to them on why it's important to focus on high impact tasks. And if you really want to use Protomatrix in a team, this is so critical because, again, other people may not be aligned with you on the things that you need to be working on. But that's the goal with Protomatrix, is to put everyone on the same page. And again, we're not a task management app like a to-do list app or a project management app. We're a prioritization app. And so prioritization means deciding what needs to be done, not just doing things, right? So don't forget that aspect of Protomatrix. When you create tasks, make sure you set the due dates, make sure you put them in the appropriate quadrant for that reason. And then when you are done, mark them as done. Protomatrix will track how long it took you to actually mark those tasks as done. If you are actually waiting and all that, then you'll lose visibility on whether or not you're getting things done on time. And then lastly, ruthlessly prioritize. You have to. It's your time. If you don't prioritize, someone else will prioritize your time for you. Some advice: use Protomatrix to track high impact tasks. The more time that you spend trying to decide what you need to work on because it's important and so forth is actually so much more valuable. And then use Protomatrix as a communication tool with your manager and your team members. Today, after this webinar, if you use Protomatrix and start creating projects, start taking that list that you have in terms of the priorities that's in your head and start sharing that with your team members. So then they can start seeing and discuss with you whether or not you're on the same page. What success with Protomatrix should look like. 1, you have a central place to track priorities, right? Again, everything that's important should be in Party Matrix. Everyone on the team should understand and are aligned on key tasks. And then if you have repetitive procedures, use that template system to save you time. And then if you do have important emails, don't forward the email, don't flag them, prioritize them, set a due date so then you actually remember to get back to them. And with that, I'm going to see if there are any questions here that's not addressed. Um, all right. So I see a question on deploying Party Matrix on Outlook, but not on Teams. So that really, when you go to the App Store, for example, here, and you click on apps and you search for Party Matrix, you see we have these different options for you to deploy. If you see something that's different from install or add or open, it might just mean that you have to get IT to approve it. So Party Matrix is a Microsoft 365 security certified solution. You can see this little check, this shield right here. That means, we've been certified by Microsoft. So from an IT standpoint, they should be able to approve this really readily and easily. And if they have problems with that, they can reach out to us and we can give them instructions on how to approve the app. Same thing in Outlook. And so if you have some permission issue, it's likely related to your IT. Is there an option to reduce email sent to others? Yes. So what happens with Party Matrix is that we have several ways to have notifications. So as you can see in here, we have the home view, right? But what happens is you can also get email notifications and chatbot notifications, but you can turn off the email notifications by going to your account. So for example, when you're signed into Party Matrix here at the very bottom, there's an option to email preferences. So if you click on that email preferences, you can actually turn off email notifications for yourself. And so your team members can actually turn that off and then they won't get notified every time a task is modified. And you can actually choose what kind of emails you get. You can have emails for reports and so forth. Please show the Gantt chart. So let me show you the Gantt chart. That's a great question. So let's go back to Party Matrix here. So now what happens is Party Matrix, as I mentioned, has the quad matrix view, but you can actually change other views. The list view, I like the list view as a place for you to see tasks that are overdue because you can actually sort them by overdue and modified and so forth. And then you have the calendar view, very easy for you to see what are tasks that's coming up for this project. And then you have the Gantt chart. So the way the Gantt chart works is actually very simple. Whenever you have tasks that actually have dates, it actually shows up on here. And if you have tasks that spans across multiple days, then it'll show up visually on the Gantt chart. And then what you can also do is you can actually, when you select a task, you can actually add dependencies. So if your Gantt chart has dependencies, the way you do that is you link the Party Matrix items together. So for example, when I have a task here, I can link to an existing item. For example, I can link to this item right here, and then I have several options. I can say that this task is related. Related just means that there's a inside Party Matrix, it'll tell you these tasks are related. You can jump back and forth between them, but there's no actual time relationship. But you can say that this task blocked by this other task, or blocks this other task, or is caused by this other task, or causes another task. Now, blocked by and caused by are the same thing in terms of functionality. Blocks and causes are the same thing in terms of functionality, but they just have different terminology, and it's all supposed to be informational. So, at your organization, if you want to say that, hey, this task is blocked by this other task, then you use that that option instead. So I'll show you how that works. All you got to do is choose that this task is blocked by this other task, and that's how you can actually add dependencies inside Party Matrix. And again, when you have those dependencies, our Gantt chart will actually build that. So you can see now that I added that dependency, these tasks are actually linked together. And so just because my due dates are off here, so therefore it looks strange, but usually, you will have the cascading flow from the Gantt chart. And then from here, you can print this out, etc. So if you're a project manager and you want to show a Gantt chart, you don't have to go and build fancy Gantt chart. All you have to do is actually just add the task with due dates in Party Matrix. And when you click on the Gantt chart, we'll build a Gantt chart for you automatically. So inviting followers outside the organization. So if you're trying to invite followers outside the organization, it really depends on some, I think someone gave you an answer here. So if you have further questions on that, please reach out to us, but hopefully the answer in the chat there is addressed. In terms of creating user group, yes. So if you want to create user group, what happens is you can go to when you create a project. So let me go back to here, create a project, and then user group here. You see, these are the user group that's been created. And then if you click on this eye icon, you can actually go to the user group to actually create the various user group. Now, your admin can also create user group, and you can also create user group. And then from the user group, you can modify who's in it and so forth. So the creator of the user group has the admin permissions. But if you're an account admin, then you have a broader permission than everyone else in terms of creating user group. But yes, that's correct. You simply go to this and create those user group as needed. So in terms of again, I saw another question on using Teams and request approval. That's just something that all you have to do is ask your IT to do it. And I believe that we just sent you the instructions there. IT just has to go into Azure and approve it. Actually, it's vast majority of the time, you should be able to install Protomatrix without any problem whatsoever, because again, Protomatrix is M365 certified. So therefore, we just pop up and it's pretty straightforward, but some IT organization decide to block that for this reason. So if I want to pull a report indicating all actions and where they're currently, the status, is this possible PM? And the answer is yes. So let me show you various ways to see the information around reports. So what happens is, as I mentioned earlier, you have the project on the project list here, but if you go down, there's several other options, different views that you have inside Protomatrix. So for example, if I go to the search view, what the search view does is it shows me all the tasks that I have across all of my projects. So this list gets real long, real quick. But from here, you can think of the search view as a place to see everything and then filter as needed. When you click on the filter section, you can say, show me all the tasks that are overdue. Show me all the tasks that are stars. Show me all the tasks that are due this week and so forth. But then as you go down further, you can say, show me all the tasks that are unfinished or finished, right? So for example, you can say, show me all the tasks that are finished in quadrant 1, that was assigned to somebody. And so Protomatrix actually, when you have thousands or tens of thousands of tasks, this is a fantastic way to see everything. And so the search view is extremely powerful for that purpose. And then not only that, as you go down further, you can change the dates and so forth too. So if you're trying to run a report that shows, hey, what did Bob do last quarter, or what does Sally have to do this coming quarter? Protomatrix gives you all of that right here, and you just run the filter as needed. The other way that we have reports, the other types of reports we have is actually right here. If you go to reports, we have two types of reports. You have a general report, which you get on a weekly basis that just gives you a status update on everything across Protomatrix. And you also have workload report that gives you a sense of how many things people have on their plate. So as I mentioned earlier, when you set due dates, it shows up on their workload report. So if you have a bunch of team members and you're trying to make sure that you're not assigning tasks to someone who's going to get overloaded next week, for example, they'll go to the workload report and you can actually drill down. You can see what they have to work on any day, whatsoever. All right. Is there a free version of Protomatrix? The answer is yes. So Protomatrix has a free tier if you have less than 5 projects, 100 open tasks, and 5 collaborators. The purpose of that is for you to be able to experience Protomatrix, without having to worry about getting a license. And so you can use Protomatrix inside Teams, inside Outlook, in a web app, etc., as long as you're under that threshold. So that works really well for individuals. That works really well for small teams. One of the things you'll find, though, is as you use Protomatrix more, you want to create more projects. You want to be able to track your tasks. You want to be able to have a good history and understanding of how you're doing. And so that's a reason for you to upgrade down the road, but you can always get started with the free version. These are fantastic questions. Are there any other questions? And so one of the things, and now actually we're out of time, one of the things I want to mention is feel free to reach out to me, hi@affluence.com, or support@affluence.com if you have technical questions, et cetera. We're here to help you. Again, I want to emphasize that if you have specific challenges around your job title, your job function, your goals, let us know. We're actually building guides for each of those use cases. So I want to ensure that, Party Matrix is helpful to you achieving your goals and so that. So definitely reach out to us, and then definitely pitch Party Matrix to your team members. Feel free to send them this webinar recording if needed. Thank you all.